Okay, class. Mr. Langston clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Today we're doing something a little different. I want each of you to stand up and share what your parents do for a living. Let's learn more about each other. Groans, spread across the room like spilled soda, sticky and unwanted. Eli Carter stared down at his desk, his fingers gripping a chewed-up pencil. He hated speaking in front of the class. Worse, he hated talking about his dad. Not because he wasn't proud, no. Eli admired his dad more than anyone. It was just, no one ever believed him. The first few kids went, firefighter, nurse, works at Walmart, Uber driver, mechanic, hairstylist. Then Mr. Langston called out, "Eli, you're up." Eli's throat tightened. He stood slowly, his chair creaking back behind him. 24 curious faces turned toward him. He swallowed. "My dad." He paused. His heart thumped like launch countdowns he watched on YouTube. "My dad works at NASA." There was a beat of silence. Then someone, Trent, snorted. "What, he cleans the floors there?" Laughter rippled through the room. A few kids whispered, some outright chuckled. "Is he an alien or something?" Another voice joked. "You mean like space janitor?" Eli froze, the heat rushing to his cheeks. He didn't know what to say. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. He didn't owe them proof. But still, it stung. Mr. Langston raised a hand. All right. Let's show some respect. No judgment here. NASA's a big deal." That's when the classroom door creaked open. Everyone turned. A man stepped in, tall, confident, dressed in a blue flight suit with the NASA patch on the chest and the American flag stitched to the shoulder. His boots made a heavy sound as he crossed the floor. Eli's eyes widened. "Dad?" Mark Carter nodded at his son, then turned toward Mr. Langston with a calm, professional smile. "Sorry to interrupt. I'm here to pick Eli up for a doctor's appointment." The room went silent, dead silent. No more laughter, no more jokes. Trent's jaw hung open like a satellite dish catching static. Mr. Langston blinked. Yes. Of course, Mr. Carter. We were just talking about, jobs." Mark gave a polite nod, then looked directly at the class. "Eli's right. I work at NASA. Been there for almost 12 years now." Someone gasped. A girl in the front row whispered, "Oh my God." Mark turned back to his son. "Ready, buddy?" Eli couldn't move at first. Then he grabbed his backpack and walked out beside his dad, head high for the first time in what felt like forever. The door closed behind them, and all was quiet. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward even when things get tough? Before the laughter, before the looks, and before the suit, Eli Carter was just a quiet kid with a head full of stars. He wasn't the loudest in the room. He didn't run the fastest, didn't make the team, and never really tried to. His playground was the night sky. His scoreboard was Orion's belt. At recess, while most kids played tag or threw footballs, Eli would lie on the grass and point out constellations, tracing them with his finger like secret maps only he could read. "Come on, dude," Trent had said once, sneering. "You're seriously watching clouds?" "They're not clouds," Eli replied softly. "That's Venus. You can see it during the day sometimes." The only response was laughter and a shove that sent him face first into the grass. At home, things were different. The Carter household was small but warm. It smelled like old books and cinnamon tea. His mom, Sarah, worked part-time at the public library and always had a story ready, whether it was about Greek myths or how astronauts trained underwater. She never missed a chance to remind Eli of something important. Don't ever apologize for dreaming big. The people who change the world, they're the ones who never stopped. Eli would nod, then sneak off to his room where his telescope stood by the window like a sentinel. On his desk sat a worn-out composition notebook with space stickers peeling at the edges. The first page read, in shaky 8-year-old handwriting, Eli's mission log getting to Mars. Inside there were drawings of rockets, calculations he didn't fully understand, quotes from astronauts, and even letters he wrote but never sent, mostly to his dad. Mark Carter was kind, but distant. A mechanical systems engineer at NASA, His job took him away for days or weeks at a time. He wasn't great at FaceTime calls or bedtime stories. When he was home, he was exhausted. He'd hug Eli, ruffle his hair, and say something like, "One day I'll tell you everything, just not yet, buddy." Eli believed him. He always did. Still, sometimes it felt like his dad lived on a different planet. Once during career day in second grade, Eli had stood up proudly and said, "My dad helps people get to space." The teacher smiled politely. The class? Not so much. By the time he was in fifth grade, Eli had learned to stop talking about his dad's job. Not because he wasn't proud, he was, but every time he mentioned NASA, it was met with disbelief or jokes. Most kids in their small Texas town thought space stuff was only in movies, so when Mr. Langston had asked what his dad did, Eli had hesitated. And when the laughter came, it was like déjà vu. But this time had been different. This time his dad showed up. And not just showed up, he walked in like something out of a movie. Boots, patch, presence. For the first time ever, Eli wasn't the weird kid with a wild imagination. He was the kid whose dad actually worked at NASA. Later that night, Eli sat on the porch with his notebook, legs tucked up, the sky stretching above like an open storybook. He scribbled, "Today was the first time they believed me. Not because I said it, but because he showed them." He paused, then added, "Maybe the stars aren't so far away after all." Inside, Mark watched his son through the screen door, holding a mug of coffee. He didn't say anything, but he smiled, just a little, and whispered, "Time to tell him." Monday morning hit differently. Eli walked into class, backpack snug on his shoulders, notebook in hand, and a quiet confidence he wasn't used to feeling. There were no whispers behind his back this time, just eyes. Watching, studying, as if trying to figure out how someone like him could have a dad like that. He sat at his usual desk by the window. The seat behind him, where Trent always lounged like he owned the place, creaked louder than normal as the boy dropped into it. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Trent leaned in and muttered, "So what? Your dad wears a costume." Now, Eli didn't turn around. "It's not a costume, it's a flight suit." Trent snorted, then leaned back. "Sure, bet he just wore it to make you look cool." A few nearby kids heard, but they didn't laugh. Not this time. Instead, one of the girls, Jessica, who sat 2 rows over, looked up from her sketchpad and asked, "Is it true your dad worked on real rockets?" Eli blinked, a little caught off guard. "Yeah, he's a mechanical engineer. He helps design systems for zero-gravity testing and propulsion." She nodded, impressed. "That's actually kinda awesome." Eli couldn't help it. He smiled. Trent scowled. It was subtle at first. The way his pencil accidentally rolled off the desk into Eli's space, or how he bumped Eli's chair in the lunch line. Small stuff. But Eli noticed, and he knew exactly what it was. Envy, and envy in 5th grade is a slow-burning fire. That night Eli sat at his desk, flipping through a book on Mars colonization. His window was cracked open, and a light breeze rustled the pages. From the hallway he heard footsteps. His dad knocked lightly. "Got a minute?" Mark asked. Eli nodded. Mark stepped in, holding 2 mugs, one hot chocolate, the other coffee. He handed Eli the hot chocolate and sat on the edge of the bed. "I've been thinking," Mark said after a sip. "It's time we talked about what I really do." Eli perked up. "Really?" Mark smiled. "I've been working on a simulation project. It helps astronauts train for zero-gravity situations on long-term missions. Mars, Europa, maybe even deeper one day." Eli's eyes widened. "You mean like the Mars missions?" "Exactly. It's still years away, but we're laying the groundwork." Eli clutched his mug, mind already racing with possibilities. "Could I ever help with something like that?" Mark met his gaze. "Absolutely, but not if you quit dreaming, you hear me?" "I won't," Eli said. "I never will." Back at school, things were shifting. A few students started sitting closer to Eli, asking him questions, not laughing, listening. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, and honestly, it made him a little uncomfortable. But there was something else, a quiet crack forming in the wall Trent had built around himself. During a group project, Eli noticed Trent staring out the window instead of working. When the teacher walked by, Trent snapped to attention and scribbled something random just to look busy. Later that day, Eli overheard him in the hallway talking to another kid. "Could have said my uncle works at SpaceX," Trent grumbled. "Nobody would have cared." It wasn't just about NASA. It was about being seen. That night, Eli wrote in his notebook again, "Today I realized even the loudest people might feel invisible sometimes. But you don't shine brighter by dimming someone else." He paused, then added, "Still, I don't trust Trent. Not yet." The stars outside twinkled like they were listening. Something was changing. And Eli could feel it in his bones. This wasn't just about school anymore. It was the beginning of something bigger. When people thought of NASA, they usually pictured astronauts floating in zero gravity or space shuttles launching in slow motion with a fiery roar. What they didn't picture were the people like Mark Carter, the ones behind the curtain buried in blueprints and stress, trying to keep those rockets from becoming disasters. Mark sat in front of a massive wall of monitors at NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, a sprawling facility just outside Houston. It was early, the kind of early where even the vending machine still seemed half asleep. He sipped lukewarm coffee and adjusted a simulation module, running diagnostics on the virtual Mars vehicle he'd spent the last 6 months fine-tuning. His job wasn't glamorous. It wasn't on posters or news channels, but it mattered. Mark specialized in the engineering of simulated environments, training astronauts for long-term missions in low-gravity conditions, testing equipment that hadn't even been built yet. Today, he was preparing a stress simulation for EVA suits in 0.38 G, Mars-style gravity. "Still trying to make space boots smarter than the astronauts, huh?" a voice teased behind him. Mark turned to see Camilla Reyes, fellow engineer and longtime colleague. "Someone's got to do it," he smirked. "Otherwise, we're just sending really expensive tin cans to die on Mars." She pulled up a chair. "Heard about the classroom drop-in. Word travels fast." Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "Didn't mean to make a scene. Eli's been getting picked on. Thought maybe it'd help if I showed up." Camilla nodded slowly. Sometimes the smallest moment in a kid's life sticks longer than all the big ones. Mark didn't say anything, but he knew she was right. Flashback. 11 years ago, it was the day Eli was born. Mark remembered pacing the hospital hallway, heart pounding harder than any launch countdown. When they finally placed the tiny, screaming, red-faced bundle in his arms, he thought, "How am I supposed to explain the universe to you when I don't even understand it yet?" He made a promise that night. Not to make Eli a genius, not to make him an astronaut, but to never lie to him, to show up, to be the kind of dad who stayed, even when space pulled him away. Now, staring at his son's drawing pinned to the corner of his monitor, a shaky crayon rocket launching from Earth with the words, "Dad is helping them fly." Mark felt a familiar ache in his chest. He hadn't been the most present father. That much he knew. NASA demanded sacrifice, and sometimes the sacrifice looked a lot like missing soccer games and school plays, but he'd been trying. And last Friday, when he saw Eli's face light up as he walked into that classroom, it felt like he was the one being rescued from orbit. That evening he got home late, briefcase in one hand, pizza in the other. Sarah was folding laundry on the couch, a half-watched documentary flickering on TV. "He's upstairs," she said. "Hasn't stopped drawing since dinner." Mark smiled and made his way up. Eli's room looked like a Space Command Center exploded. Diagrams taped to the walls, books on propulsion stacked like launch towers, telescope aimed precisely at Mars. "Sinjo, working for us now?" Mark asked, stepping inside. Eli spun around, eyes wide. "I'm redesigning the Mars rover. Thought I could give it a defense shield in case, aliens." Mark laughed. "You might be a few decades ahead of us." Eli hesitated. "Do you think I could ever be part of it? NASA, I mean?" Mark sat beside him on the bed. "Eli, I think you already are." That night, long after the house went quiet, Eli scribbled into his notebook, "Behind the suit, my dad's just like me. A dreamer who built his way into space." He underlined it twice, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't just feel like a kid in the background. He felt like a part of something bigger. Eli Carter had never been this popular. Monday morning felt like walking into a different universe. Same classroom, same desk, same kids. But the vibe had completely shifted. He barely made it to his seat before 3 students surrounded him. Eli, was that really your dad? Has he been to the moon? Do you have, like, alien contact at your house? Eli blinked, overwhelmed. Yesterday, no one cared if he even showed up. Today, he felt like he'd won a Grammy and a Nobel Prize on the same day. Yeah, that was him, he said, voice cautious. No, he's not an astronaut, but he works on the systems that help astronauts train. And no, I don't think we have aliens. The last one disappointed a few people. Mr. Langston walked in, raising his hands. All right. Settle. Down, Space Rangers. We've got actual work to do. There were some groans, but the attention faded, for now. But even as the spotlight flickered off, Eli could feel eyes still tracking him, especially one pair from the back row. Trent wasn't laughing anymore, but his expression wasn't friendly either. It was something colder, calculating. During math class, while the teacher went over equations, Trent leaned forward and whispered just loud enough, "Bet you think you're better than everyone now." Eli didn't respond. He didn't have to. That moment in class, when his dad had walked in, had done all the talking. Still, Eli knew this wasn't over. At recess, Eli sat on the bench near the jungle gym, flipping through a book on the Mars rover missions. Jessica walked over, plopping beside him like she'd been planning it all morning. "Hey, I didn't know NASA people could have kids like regular people." Eli chuckled. "We're more normal than you'd think." She pointed to a photo in the book. "Do you think you'll go to Mars one day?" Eli looked up at the sky, blue, cloudless, so different from the red dust and chaos of the planet he dreamed about. "I don't know," he said, "but I want to help someone get there." Jessica tilted her head. "That's kind of cool. I always wanted to be a vet, or a food blogger, not sure which." That made him smile. It was one of the first conversations that felt real. Not about his dad, not about NASA, just 2 kids being curious about the future. But that feeling didn't last long. Later that day, a rumor started floating around the lunchroom. Someone said Eli's dad only wore the suit to show off, that he wasn't really that important at NASA, that he probably just fixed the coffee machines or something. Eli sat in silence, trying to chew his sandwich while voices buzzed behind him. Then, someone tossed a balled-up napkin across the table. It landed right in front of him, written in red ink. "NASA nerd. Bet your dad just mops the launch pad." Eli crumpled it up slowly. Trent, 2 tables over, stared at him with a smug little smirk. That evening, Eli didn't say much at dinner, his mom noticed. "Rough day," he shrugged. "People are weird. Some of them think Dad's not really who he says he is." Mark paused mid-bite. "You want me to come in again? Set the record straight?" Eli shook his head. "No, I don't want to prove anything." Mark looked proud. "You don't have to. Truth doesn't need an audience." Eli nodded, but the truth still stung. He didn't want to be popular. He just wanted to be believed. That night, under his blankets with a flashlight and his trusty notebook, Eli wrote, "Fame isn't real. One minute they love you, the next they doubt everything. Maybe I don't need them to believe me. Maybe I just need to believe in myself." He closed the notebook, tucked it under his pillow, and stared up at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to his ceiling. Some still shone brighter than others. By Wednesday, Eli had become something of a celebrity in Indi. A small town, it didn't take much. A kid says his dad works at NASA, nobody believes him, until the man himself walks in like a character from a movie. Now everyone wanted something from Eli. Questions, stories, inside info. Kids asked about aliens, secret moon bases, even if NASA had a plan for the zombie apocalypse. At first, it was fun. Then it got exhausting. In homeroom, Eli tried to focus on his worksheet, but Noah, the kid who used to ignore him completely, leaned over and whispered, "Hey, I told my cousin about your dad. He doesn't believe me. Can you get him on FaceTime?" Eli blinked. "You want me to call my dad at NASA during work?" Noah shrugged like it was no big deal. "Just for a sec, it'd be cool." Eli shook his head. I'm not doing that. Noah rolled his eyes. Whatever. Thought you were proud of him. The words hit like a gut punch. Was that how people saw him now? Like he was a gatekeeper to something special. Like he owed them something. During lunch, the pressure got worse. Trent sat at his usual table, surrounded by the same group of kids he always kept wrapped around him like a varsity jacket. He didn't look at Eli, until Eli walked by. That's when Trent casually raised his voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. Must be nice getting popular just 'cause your daddy has a cool job. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli stopped. Everyone was watching now. He turned. At least I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. A few gasps, a few heads turned. Trent stood up, slow. What's that supposed to mean? Eli didn't flinch. You act like you don't care about NASA, but you ask more questions than anyone. Trent's jaw tightened, but then he smirked. Whatever. Keep pretending you're special. Everyone knows it's just your dad, not you. Eli's hands clenched at his sides. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. That night at home, Eli stormed into his room, threw his backpack onto the floor and sat on the edge of his bed, seething. His mom knocked softly a few minutes later. Hey, sweetie, want to talk? He stared down at his socks. People only like me now because of Dad, and the ones who don't like me hate me because of him. Sarah stepped inside, sitting beside him. Sometimes people confuse respect with jealousy. They want what you have but don't know how to say it. Eli didn't answer. She added, What do you want them to see when they look at you? He paused. Me, not just NASA's kid. Later that night, he opened his notebook. Again, respect without connection feels fake. Envy wears a lot of masks. Sometimes it even smiles at you. He looked out the window. The sky was cloudy that night. No stars. But stars don't disappear just because we can't see them. The next morning, Eli made a decision. He walked into class quietly, like always, sat in his seat. No one bothered him right away. When the teacher passed out project sheets, career path presentations, everyone groaned, but not Eli. He raised his hand. Can I go first? He asked. The class turned, surprised. Mr. Langston raised an eyebrow. You sure? Eli nodded. Yeah, I think it's time. Most fifth graders hated presentations. The stares, the nerves, the awkward pauses when your brain goes blank and your voice cracks. But Eli Carter walked to the front of the classroom with a different kind of energy. He wasn't nervous, he was ready. Mr. Langston stepped aside, nodding. All right, Eli, the floor's yours. Eli stood tall in front of the whiteboard, holding a rolled-up poster and his notebook. I didn't want to be first, he said honestly, glancing at the class, but I realized if I wait too long to speak up, someone else might tell my story for me, and they'd probably get it wrong. A few kids perked up. Eli took a breath and unrolled the poster, his own hand-drawn design of a Mars colony. Not perfect, not flashy, but real. This is what I want to build one day, he continued, pointing to the domes and rovers. A sustainable base for humans on Mars. I want to be part of the first team that makes it livable, not just for astronauts, but for people, families, scientists, artists, everyone. The room was quiet. Even Trent looked unsure for once. Lie. Kept going. My dad works at NASA, that part's true. He's an engineer who helps test systems for space training. But that's his story. He held up his notebook, the one covered in space stickers and wear from years of dreaming. This one's mine. He opened it, showing a page filled with sketches and ideas. I've been planning this since I was 8, not because anyone told me to, not because it's cool, but because I believe space belongs to all of us, and I want to be one of the people who helps take us there. Jessica whispered, Dang. Eli smiled. I don't know if I'll be an astronaut or an engineer or even just the guy fixing solar panels on Mars, but whatever it is, I'm going to get there. He paused. I used to think no one believed me, and maybe that's true. But I realized something. He turned and looked right at Trent, not with anger, but with clarity. You don't need permission to believe in yourself. And you don't need applause to be worth something. Silence. Mr. Langston cleared his throat, visibly impressed. That was exceptionally done, Eli. Then, one by one, hands started clapping. Quiet at first, then louder, real, genuine. Even Trent hesitated, then gave a single awkward clap before looking down at his desk. It wasn't about popularity anymore. It was about truth. After class, Jessica caught up with Eli by the lockers. "That was incredible," she said. "I didn't know you could talk like that." "Me either," Eli admitted, laughing a little. "You really think people can live on Mars one day?" "I don't just think," he said. "I'm planning on it." That night, Eli sat under his blankets again, notebook open, flashlight balanced between his knees. "I thought they had to believe in me first. But maybe I had to believe in me first." He flipped to a blank page and wrote in big block letters, "Mission log, start of Phase 2 status. Confidence." Online, the stars were out again, and so was he. Thursday morning buzzed with an unusual energy. Mr. Langston stood at the front of the room, holding a bright yellow flyer. "All right, listen up," he said, tapping the whiteboard. "I've got something special for those of you who like a challenge." That caught everyone's attention. Next month, our district is holding a STEM showcase: robotics, engineering, design thinking. Teams from other schools are competing too. There's even a NASA rep on the judging panel. Eli sat up straighter. "Teams of 3, Mr. Langston continued. You'll have a month to build or design something innovative. Could be a prototype, a blueprint, or a working model. Winners go on to state regionals." Gasps, excited whispers. Trent, from the back, muttered, "Oh, great. Now Eli's going to be the judge's favorite." Eli heard it, but this time he didn't let it land. At lunch, Jessica found him in the hallway. "You're doing the showcase, right?" "Absolutely," Eli said without hesitation. "You in?" "Only if I'm on your team." They grinned. A minute later, Owen, a shy kid who loved coding but hated talking, slid into their conversation with his tablet in hand. "I, made a drone last summer," he offered quietly. "And it didn't catch fire, so—" Eli laughed. And just like that, the team was formed. Eli Vision, Jessica Design, Owen Tech, the Dream Trio. Trent raised his hands, pretending to be innocent. "I'm not messing with you. Just came to check out the competition." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You know," he said over his shoulder, "it's gonna be pretty embarrassing if your dad finds out you couldn't even finish a school project." The words hit like a slap. Eli clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. "Don't listen to him," Jessica said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "He's trying to get in your head," Owen added quietly. But Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Later that evening, as the team continued to work, Eli made a decision. He wasn't going to let Trent's words or his sabotage define him. He wasn't going to prove anything to anyone else. He wasn't doing this for Trent or for the kids at school who didn't believe in him. He was doing it for himself. The next morning, Eli sat with Jessica and Owen, their faces tired but determined. "We're not just going to win this competition," Eli said firmly. "So we're going to destroy it," Jessica smiled. "That's the spirit," Owen cracked a rare grin. "And maybe keep our rover from exploding this time." Eli looked at them both, the weight of the sabotage still lingering but no longer holding. "Him down. We've got one last push. Let's make it count." The night before the competition, Eli stayed up late again, alone in his room. He stared at the rover on his desk, the model he'd built as a kid of a Mars colony, reminder of the dream that had never been broken, even when the world tried to tear it apart. He opened his notebook once more. The difference between failure and success isn't always skill. Sometimes it's just refusing to quit. And tomorrow we'll prove that. He closed the book, tucking it under his pillow. Tomorrow everything would change. The gymnasium at Ridgeview High School was buzzing with energy. Hundreds of students, parents, and teachers milled around, browsing displays of robotics, 3D printed models, and experimental prototypes. The competition was in full swing, and Eli could feel the weight of it pressing on his chest as he adjusted his team's booth. Jessica was putting the final touches on the rover's solar panels, her hands steady despite the jitters she wouldn't admit to. Owen was glued to his tablet, running diagnostics on the rover's code one last time. Eli paced, trying to push the nerves out of his system. "We're ready," Jessica said, glancing up at him. "Just breathe." Eli nodded, trying to swallow down the lump in his throat. They'd worked so hard, everything had to go right. "I'm just thinking about what Trent's gonna pull," Eli muttered, rubbing his hands together. "He's not gonna let this go." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Don't waste your energy on him. We've come too far." Owen spoke up, his voice low but focused. "I think we've done everything we can. Now we just need to show them what we've got." The judges made their rounds, stopping at each booth to ask questions and evaluate the projects. Eli kept his eyes on them as they approached the team's booth. The one thing that gave him confidence was the rover. The way it hummed to life when he activated it, its wheels turning smoothly and its lights flashing green. It wasn't just a machine. It was their dream, all packed into a small, self-sustaining rover that could one day explore Mars. Mr. Langston, one of the judges for the event, was walking along with them. He smiled when he saw Eli's project. "I see the rover's up and running. Impressive." Eli grinned. "It's self-repairing. If it damages its treads, it can replace them by drawing from its onboard reserves." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Very ambitious. What inspired this idea?" Eli hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've always wanted to go to Mars, and I realized we don't just need humans up there. We need sustainable systems. So I thought, why not make a rover that could keep going, no matter what happens to it?" The judge nodded, clearly impressed. "It's a great concept. Let's see how it performs." Eli hit a button and the rover began to move across the table. It rolled smoothly, sensors adjusting to obstacles, its AI controlling the movement with remarkable precision. The judge looked at Eli, a small smile forming. "This is fantastic work. Truly. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this." Jessica looked over at Eli, a proud smile on her face. Eli didn't respond immediately. He couldn't take his eyes off the rover. It was like watching something he'd built from nothing finally come to life. His dream in motion. But just as everything seemed perfect, Eli's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down at the screen. A message from Jessica. "Trent's team is about to present, and they've got something that looks exactly like ours." Eli's stomach dropped. It had to be a mistake. He checked the time. Trent's team would be presenting next. 5 minutes later, the gym's PA system crackled to life. "Next up, we have Trent Daniels' team presenting their innovative approach to Martian exploration." Eli's pulse quickened. He glanced at Jessica and Owen. "We need to see this." They rushed to the side of the gym, where Trent was confidently presenting his team's rover. It looked almost identical to theirs, same size, same shape, even the same sleek design. But there was something off about it. Something familiar. Trent was standing in front of his team, hands on his hips, beaming. "This is our Mars rover designed to explore the red planet with a self-repairing system." Eli's heart sank. He was sure he saw the same AI code running on Trent's tablet. There was no doubt now Trent had stolen their design. Jessica stepped forward, eyes blazing with anger. "That's our project, Trent. You took our idea." Trent shot her a smug smile. "Oh, really? Because I'm pretty sure this is my team's work. Maybe you guys should have been more careful about who you shared your ideas with." Eli stepped in, trying to stay calm. "You sabotaged our project. And now you're copying it. What's next, Trent?" Trent just shrugged. "It's called competition, Carter. You should try it sometime." Eli felt the rage bubbling up, but he pushed it down. This wasn't just about Trent anymore. It was about proving they could do this on their own. Jessica grabbed Eli's arm. "Let's go back. Let's finish what we started." Back at their booth, Eli and his team went into overdrive. The judges were still walking around, but Eli didn't care about them right now. He cared about making sure their rover performed better than Trent's. He had a new idea. It was risky. But if they could pull it off, their rover would outshine Trent's in front of everyone. Owen worked furiously at his tablet, reprogramming the rover's AI to perform a new maneuver, one that Trent's rover wouldn't be able to replicate. Jessica adjusted the solar panels, tweaking the design to give the rover more speed. And then it was time. As the judges came back around, Eli took a deep breath. This was their moment. He activated the rover and it sped across the table faster than it had before, navigating obstacles with ease. It turned corners and avoided barriers in ways the other rover couldn't, displaying the true potential of their innovation. The judges were impressed. They nodded approvingly, even as Trent's team looked on, their faces flushed with frustration. Mr. Langston stepped up to Eli. "I have to say, I'm very impressed. The level of creativity here is something we don't see every day." Eli smiled, his heart racing. "Thank you." At the end of the day, the results were announced. The judges congratulated all the teams for their hard work, but when the winners were revealed, Eli's heart skipped a beat. First place, Eli Carter and his team. The crowd erupted into applause. Eli's team stood frozen for a moment, shocked, before they burst into smiles and laughter. They had done it. Despite everything, despite Trent, despite the sabotage, they had won. After the awards ceremony, Trent stormed over to Eli. "This isn't over, Carter," he sneered. "You might have won this time, but you'll never be the best." Eli met his gaze unflinching. "You'll have to try harder next time, Trent." As Trent turned to walk away, Eli felt something shift. He wasn't just proud of winning the competition. He was proud of how he got there, on his own terms with his friends by his side, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than any trophy. The excitement of the STEM showcase win had barely settled when Eli found himself back in the lab the following Monday. The trophy they'd earned was still sitting proudly on the windowsill, catching the light. But despite the physical evidence of their success, Eli could feel the weight of what came next, pressing down on him. The dream he'd worked so hard for, the one he'd fought for, even when it seemed impossible, was just beginning. "Congratulations." "Again, Eli," Mr. Langston said as he passed by during class. "I have a feeling this is just the start for you." Eli smiled, grateful for the support, but something was gnawing at him. What now? It wasn't just about winning a trophy anymore. The competition had shown him that he could build something real, something that mattered. He'd proven to himself, and to everyone else, that he could think beyond the classroom. But what did that mean for his future? He glanced over at Jessica and Owen, who were talking animatedly about what they'd do next. The next challenge. "That was incredible," Jessica said, her voice full of excitement. "I'm already thinking about what we could do next year. We've got to make it even bigger." Eli shook his head. "We could do a lot more than that. I don't know if I want to wait until next year." Owen looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Eli took a deep breath. "What if we didn't have to wait at all? What if we took this somewhere bigger? I don't know, like, what if we tried to get the rover into an actual space program?" Jessica's eyes widened. "Wait, you mean like NASA?" Eli nodded. "Why not? We've got the design. We know it works. What if we sent it to space? Not just some local competition. What if we actually sent it to space?" Later that evening, Eli sat at his desk staring at the night sky through his window. The stars seemed closer somehow, like they were just waiting for him to reach out, to take the next step. He grabbed his phone and Googled something that made his heart race. NASA student programs. A few clicks later, and he was reading about an internship program for high school students. He kept scrolling, his mind buzzing with possibilities. What if he could get involved in something bigger than a high school project? What if this was his chance to go all the way, to work with the people who actually made the technology that reached the stars? He sent the link to Jessica and Owen, his hands shaking slightly. This could be it. The next day at lunch, the three of them huddled together at their usual table. Eli was practically bouncing in his seat. "I found it," he said, showing them his phone screen. "NASA has a student internship program. They're accepting applications now." Jessica's eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" "Yeah. It's competitive, but why not us? We've already built something they'd be interested in. We've got the skills, we've got the project, we can show them what we can do." Owen, usually the quiet one, tapped his finger on the table, deep in thought. "That's a huge step." "Eli, what if they don't accept us?" Eli shrugged, his eyes determined. "We'll keep pushing. We didn't get this far by giving up, and if we don't make it in, we'll find another way. But we have to try." It wasn't long before they were all working on their applications, refining their resumes and drafting emails to the NASA student program coordinators. They had everything they needed: A winning project, clear goals, and the drive to go even further. It felt like the start of something huge. But just as things were falling into place, Eli received a message that made his stomach twist. It was, "From Trent. You really think NASA is going to be impressed by a high school project? Keep dreaming, you're not even close to what they're looking for." Eli stared at the message for a moment, his frustration rising again. Why was Trent still trying to drag him down? After all the sabotage, the competition, and the win, why was Trent still so obsessed with proving that Eli didn't belong? He tossed his phone on the desk, shaking his head. This is just what he does. He can't handle anyone being better than him. Jessica, who had been sitting next to him, glanced at the phone. "Don't let him get to you." "I'm not," Eli said, pushing the phone aside. I thought after winning he'd let it go, but I guess not." Owen, looking up from his tablet, added quietly, "We're doing this for us, Eli, not for him. This is about where we want to go." The next few weeks passed in a blur of applications, team meetings, and late-night brainstorming sessions. But with every step forward, the weight of the future seemed to get heavier. The closer they got to the internship deadline, the more Eli realized just how big the next step would be. He wasn't just fighting for a chance to work at NASA. He was fighting for his future, for the chance to turn his dreams into something real, something that could actually make a difference. And then, on a Friday morning, Eli received an email that made his heart skip. It was from NASA. They'd been selected for the first round of interviews. Eli felt his entire body tense, his hands shaking as he read the email again. They'd made it. They had a chance. The next step was terrifying, but it was the one he'd been waiting for his whole life. Eli couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth in his room, the bright morning sunlight spilling in through the window, doing nothing to calm his nerves. His heart was racing, and every minute felt like an hour. Today was the day. The NASA interview. It was everything they'd worked for. Jessica was sitting on his bed, tapping her fingers on her phone screen. She looked calm. Too calm. "You're not nervous?" Eli asked, stopping in front of her. She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "Of course I am, but we've come this far. Worrying won't get us anywhere." Eli took a deep breath. "Yeah, you're right." Owen, who had been sitting at the desk, typing something on his laptop, finally looked up. "We've got this." "Healy, they wouldn't have invited us if they didn't see something in us. Now we just need to show them what we're made of." Eli nodded, trying to convince himself that they were ready. "We just need to stay focused. We can't let anything throw us off track." An hour later, the team was standing in front of a small, unassuming office building in the heart of the city. The NASA headquarters loomed before them, imposing but exciting. Eli felt like he was standing on the edge of something huge, something that could change his entire future. They made their way inside, where a receptionist led them to a conference room. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and they were alone in the room. There was no going back now. Jessica was pacing now, her fingers twitching. "What if we screw this up? What if we say something dumb?" Owen gave her a reassuring, "Look, we won't screw this up. We've done our homework. We know the project inside and out." Eli smiled weakly. "We've got this." A few minutes later, the door opened again, and in walked Dr. Lucas Hendricks, the lead scientist for NASA's student internship program. He was tall, with graying hair and an easy smile that put them all at ease. "Good morning, Eli. Jessica." "Owen," he greeted, shaking each of their hands. "I've heard a lot about your project. I'm excited to learn more." Eli swallowed. This was it. He had to make a good impression. Dr. Hendricks sat at the head of the conference table, his laptop already open in front of him. "So tell me about your rover. What inspired you to design it?" Eli's voice faltered for just a moment before he found his rhythm. "We wanted to create something that could make a real difference in exploring Mars, not just for a project or competition, but for something that could be used long-term. The rover is self-sustaining and self-repairing, so no matter what happens, it can keep going." Jessica jumped in, her confidence growing as she spoke. "The rover is designed to be adaptable, to evolve over time, just like the challenges we'll face when we send technology to Mars. We were thinking ahead, not just about a machine that gets there, but one that can handle the unpredictability of the environment. Owen's fingers hovered over his tablet. We designed it to be intelligent. The AI adjusts the rover's course depending on obstacles. It has real-time diagnostics and can even assess its own damage, making repairs automatically. Dr. Hendricks looked impressed, his eyes twinkling as he listened. You've really thought this through. But tell me, what sets your rover apart from the other designs? What makes it unique? Eli's chest tightened. This was the moment to shine. It's not just the AI or the mechanics, he began. It's the philosophy behind it. The idea that technology on Mars doesn't just survive, it adapts. We've designed it to think for itself, to problem solve, even if we're not there to direct it. The goal is for the rover to be a partner in exploration, not just a tool. Dr. Hendricks nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting perspective. And I agree. It's one thing to build technology that can survive. It's another to design it with a mind of its own. The questions kept coming. They asked about the rover's efficiency, the durability of its parts, and the data they'd gathered during testing. Eli and his team answered each one with confidence, drawing on everything they'd learned over the past months. Then Dr. Hendricks sat back, folding his arms across his chest. "I've got one more question for you," he said, his tone serious. "You've got a lot of potential here, but potential doesn't always guarantee success. What makes you believe your rover can really make a difference in the field? How do you handle failure?" Eli hesitated. This was the question that had been plaguing him the whole time. Failure. They'd all faced it, from their first failed tests to the sabotage by Trent. It wasn't a matter of if they would fail again, but when Owen looked at Eli, then turned to Dr. Hendricks. "We don't just accept failure. We learn from it. Every time we hit a roadblock, we look at it as an opportunity to improve. We've had to rebuild our designs multiple times, and each time we came back stronger. We've built this rover out of perseverance, not just technology." Jessica added, "We've had setbacks, sure, but every single one has made us rethink and refine our approach. We don't stop when things get tough. We pivot, adapt, and keep going until we get it right." Eli looked Dr. Hendricks in the eye. "We're not just building a rover. We're building resilience, and that's what will make a difference on Mars and in everything else we do." Dr. Hendricks smiled, his gaze softening. "You've all got the right attitude. You've clearly put in the work and you've got the vision. I think you got something special here." Eli's heart skipped a beat. "Did that mean—" Dr. Hendricks stood up and extended his hand. "Congratulations. We'd be honored to have you join the program. You've made it." The room was silent for a beat. Then Eli and his team erupted into a mixture of laughter and disbelief. They had actually done it. They had gotten into the NASA internship program. As they left the interview room, Eli felt like he was walking on air. The dream he'd fought for, the one he'd almost given up on so many times, it was coming true. But this wasn't just a win. It was the beginning of something even bigger. Later that evening, Eli sat by his window again, staring up at the stars. His phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. "We did it. Now let's see how far we can go." Eli smiled to himself, feeling a surge of excitement. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew one thing for sure. This was just the start. Eli couldn't sleep. The NASA internship was officially starting the next morning, and every muscle in his body was wired with excitement and anxiety. He tossed and turned in his bed, his mind racing through all the possibilities. It felt like a dream. They had made it. But now they had to prove they belonged. The phone buzzed beside him, and he grabbed it almost instinctively. It was a message from Jessica. Nervous? He smiled, even though he felt anything but calm. He quickly typed back, more like terrified. Her response came almost instantly. "We got this. Just stick to what we know, one step at a time." Eli closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in. Jessica was right. They had worked their way this far. They had a plan. Now they just had to execute. The next morning, they gathered at the entrance of NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. The sprawling campus stretched out in front of them, with high-tech buildings, research labs, and spacecraft mock-ups everywhere. It felt surreal walking through the gates. knowing that they were now part of something bigger than they could have ever imagined. "This place is massive," Owen said, looking around in awe. His voice was tinged with wonder, but there was a sense of uncertainty in it too. It was clear that, like Eli, Owen was starting to feel the weight of what they were about to do. Eli smiled nervously. "Yeah, and we're about to get lost in it." Jessica, ever the optimist, gave them both a reassuring smile. "Just think about it. We're here to learn, we're here to grow. Let's not get overwhelmed by how big it is. We belong here." As they stepped inside the main lobby, the hum of energy and innovation filled the air. NASA interns bustled about, walking with purpose and determination. Eli's heart rate picked up again as they made their way to the check-in desk. "Welcome, team." A woman with short, curly hair greeted them as they approached the counter. "You must be Eli, Jessica, and Owen. I'm Dr. Sarah Caldwell, and I'll be your supervisor for the next few months." Eli extended his hand. "It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Caldwell." She smiled warmly, shaking each of their hands. "We're excited to have you with us. You've all impressed us with your rover project, and we're eager to see what you can do next. But remember, this isn't just about the technical skills. It's about the ability to work as a team, problem solve under pressure, and think creatively. Are you ready for that?" Eli nodded, his stomach fluttering. "We're ready, Doctor." Caldwell handed each of them a folder with their assignments for the next few weeks. "Great. For today, you'll be meeting with some of the other interns and getting an introduction to the projects we're working on. I'll check in with you later this afternoon." As they walked toward the assigned meeting area, Eli felt a growing sense of anticipation. The building was filled with large open spaces, filled with engineers, researchers, and students all working on different aspects of space exploration. There were mock-ups of rovers, 3D models of lunar bases, and prototypes of satellites. It was like walking into the future. "This is unreal," Jessica said, her voice full of awe. Eli couldn't help but agree. "It's like we've stepped into another world." They took their seats at a long table where other interns had gathered. Some were from prestigious universities, others from advanced high schools, and a few were already working on advanced degrees in aerospace engineering. Eli couldn't help but feel out of place. He wasn't from a well-known school like some of these students. He was just a kid from a small town with big dreams. But as Dr. Caldwell began her introduction, Eli felt a sense of determination settle over him. She spoke about NASA's ongoing missions, the future of space exploration, and the importance of innovation and teamwork. And suddenly, Eli realized something. They weren't here to compete against the other interns. They were here to contribute, to be part of something bigger. The next few hours were a blur of introductions, briefings, and orientations. Eli was beginning to grasp the magnitude of what they were about to undertake. It wasn't just about making a rover that could survive Mars. It was about being part of the very process that would send humanity to other planets. And that realization was both exciting and terrifying. After the orientation, they were given a tour of some of the main facilities. They visited a testing lab where engineers were working on the next generation of spacesuits. They walked through a control room where experts were monitoring live data from a rover currently on Mars. And finally, they found themselves in a lab dedicated to spacecraft propulsion systems, where they were introduced to a cutting-edge propulsion technology that could revolutionize space travel. Eli could barely keep up with all the information being thrown at him. But one thing was clear. This was where he belonged. By the end of the day, Eli felt both mentally and physically drained. He couldn't stop thinking about everything they'd learned and seen. He and his team had been assigned to a group working on a new rover design, one that would need to be prepared for future missions to the Moon and Mars. They were being entrusted with tasks that were critical to the success of NASA's long-term goals. That evening, after a long day of introductions and training, they sat in the small dorm room NASA had assigned them, reflecting on everything they'd experienced. "This is a lot," Owen said, collapsing onto his bed. "I can't believe how much we've already learned in one day." Jessica, who was scrolling through her notes, nodded. "Yeah, it's overwhelming. But it's also exactly what we wanted." Eli stared out the window at the vast Texas sky, his mind buzzing with possibilities. I've wanted this my whole life, but now that we're here, it feels different. It feels like we're actually part of something that matters. Jessica smiled, her eyes full of determination. This is just the beginning, Eli. We're going to make something great. Eli turned to his friends, his heart swelling with pride. They were a team, a real team, working together towards something that could change the world, and no matter how tough it got, they would push forward. They would never give up. The next day, they were introduced to their first real challenge, a rover design competition. They had a week to come up with their own version of a rover, using NASA's specifications, and present it to a panel of engineers and scientists. The clock was ticking, but Eli wasn't afraid. This was what he had trained for. The countdown had begun, and they were ready. Eli sat in front of the computer screen, staring at the blank design file. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but for the first time in weeks, his mind felt completely blank. The competition was officially underway. They had 1 week to design a Mars rover capable of navigating the harsh terrain of the Red Planet. And this time, it wasn't just a high school competition. This was NASA. Every detail, every choice they made would be scrutinized by experts who had been working in space exploration for decades. Jessica and Owen were huddled around the table, brainstorming ideas. Owen scribbled designs on a notepad, while Jessica was furiously sketching on her tablet. "I know we've got the basics down," Jessica said, looking up from her tablet, "but we need something different, something that'll set us apart from the other teams. We can't just design a basic rover. We need to think about innovation, how we can create something the world has never seen before." Eli nodded, but a part of him felt overwhelmed. The pressure was enormous, and for the first time in their NASA journey, the reality of what they were doing hit him hard. He wasn't just an intern anymore. He was part of a team that could change the future of space exploration. Owen stood up and paced back and forth. "Okay, so we've got the basics: solar panels for energy, wheels for navigation, sensors for detecting obstacles. But if we just focus on those elements, we'll blend in with the other teams. We need to design something that works smarter, not harder." Eli's mind began to work as Owen spoke. He knew the basics. He knew about power sources, mobility, and communication systems, but they needed something more, something that would make their rover stand out in a sea of competitors. "Wait," Eli said, suddenly standing up. "What if we design a rover that's not just smart, but adaptive? One that can learn and adjust to its surroundings?" Jessica looked intrigued. "You mean like a rover that can solve problems on its own?" "Exactly," Eli replied, feeling the excitement building again. "What if we could use AI to make the rover not just follow a set path, but also adjust its strategies in real time based on obstacles, environmental changes, and even unexpected damage? The rover could adapt to whatever Mars throws at it." Owen's eyes lit up. "So, instead of just having pre-programmed actions, we teach it how to think for itself, solve problems, and decide how to tackle challenges. That would make it almost like a little explorer." Jessica tapped her chin thoughtfully. "And we could incorporate machine learning. The more data the rover collects, the more it learns about Mars, making it smarter as it continues its journey. It's not just surviving, it's thriving in the most hostile environment imaginable." Eli's heart raced with excitement. They were onto something. This could be the breakthrough they needed. The next few days were a blur of intense brainstorming and technical discussions. They spent long hours in the labs, bouncing ideas off engineers, testing simulations, and refining their design. The rover would need to be able to self-repair when it encountered damage, adjust its energy levels based on solar availability, and even adjust its mission goals based on the data it collected. Every decision they made would impact its success. On Mars, they hit some roadblocks along the way, of course. The adaptive AI system was more complex than they initially thought. They faced issues with power management, sensor integration, and even how to program the rover to think in real time, rather than just execute commands. But with each challenge, the team came together, pushing through setbacks and finding new solutions. One evening, as the team was preparing for another long night of work, Dr. Caldwell walked into their lab, her eyes scanning the room as she took in the chaos. "You're making good progress, I see," she said with a smile. "How are you all holding up?" Eli looked up from the design schematic they were working on, his eyes tired but determined. "It's been a challenge, but we're getting there. We've made some big changes to the rover's AI and we're seeing some progress." Dr. Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "AI, huh? Tell me more." Eli explained their concept, the rover's ability to adapt and learn using real-time data to change its approach to challenges on Mars. He explained how the rover would use machine learning algorithms to make decisions based on environmental data, optimizing its energy use, mobility, and mission objectives. Dr. Caldwell listened intently, nodding along. "That's an ambitious approach, but I like it. You've got the right mindset. The more adaptable the rover is, the better it'll perform in unpredictable conditions. But you've got to remember the environment on Mars is harsh. You'll need to ensure the rover's basic functions are rock solid before you get too creative." "With the AI," Jessica quickly added, "we're working on that. We're making sure that the base functionality, the mobility energy sensors, are all as stable and reliable as possible. But we're also pushing the boundaries with the AI." Dr. Caldwell smiled. "Good. Keep pushing. But remember, the key to success in this field is balancing innovation with practicality. Don't get too carried away with one idea. Make sure it all works together." The days flew by, and before they knew it, the deadline for their rover submission was fast approaching. They had made huge strides with the design, ironing out most of the kinks with the AI system and ensuring the rover could adapt to changes in its environment. As they sat in their makeshift lab late one evening, the team gathered around the final design. The rover was sleek, compact, and brimming with new technology. It wasn't just a machine, it was a partner in exploration, ready to face the unknowns of Mars. "Looks like we're done," Owen said, rubbing his eyes. "I can't believe we pulled this off." Jessica smiled, exhausted but proud. "We made it happen, all of us." Eli looked at the design, his chest swelling with pride. "This is it. We're ready." The next morning they submitted their final design, sending it off to the NASA engineers who would evaluate it. As they hit the submit button, there was a collective sense of relief and anticipation. They had pushed themselves to the limit, and now they would wait and see if their rover would stand out among the many others. As the day drew to a close, Eli sat by the window, staring out at the vast horizon beyond the NASA campus. He felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about winning the competition, it was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the growth they had experienced together. "Tomorrow's a new day," he whispered to himself, and he knew no matter what happened next, they had already achieved something incredible. The room was filled with the soft hum of computers, the clatter of keyboards, and the occasional murmur of quiet conversations. Eli sat at the edge of his seat in the crowded conference room, his hands clammy with nerves. The clock on the wall ticked, and the air seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. It was the day of the rover design review. Eli glanced around the room at his team, Jessica, Owen, and himself, all of them seated at a long conference table in NASA's main briefing room. The engineers and scientists from the various teams had gathered for what promised to be the most important meeting of the year. The stakes were high and the pressure was palpable. Dr. Caldwell stood at the front of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. Her eyes scanned the crowd of interns and experts, the professional demeanor never leaving her face. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "As you know, today is the day we will be reviewing the rover designs submitted for the upcoming Mars mission. Your projects will be judged based on innovation, functionality, and practicality. Only the best will be considered for further development. So, let's get started." She looked at the large screen behind her, which displayed a list of the teams who would be presenting that day. Eli felt his stomach churn as his team's name was called. Their rover design was about to be under intense scrutiny by some of the top engineers in the world. There was no going back now. The first few teams went up to present their designs. Some were well-organized and confident, while others stumbled through their slides, their voices wavering under the pressure. Eli and his team exchanged nervous glances as each group shared their projects. Then it was their turn. Eli stood up slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. His palms were slick with sweat, but he fought to steady his breathing. Jessica stood beside him, holding the remote to flip through their presentation slides, while Owen sat back and observed. The three of them were in sync as they moved to the front of the room. "Good afternoon," Eli began, his voice a little shaky at first, but growing stronger with each word. "We're Team Perseverance, and we're here to present our design for a next-generation Mars rover. Our project focuses on adaptability and innovation, creating a rover that not only survives on Mars, but learns from its environment and adapts in real time. We believe that the future of space exploration relies on smart machines capable of solving problems without waiting for human input." Jessica clicked the remote, bringing up the first slide of their presentation. A sleek, futuristic rover design appeared on the screen behind them. "Our rover uses advanced AI and machine learning algorithms to adapt its mission objectives based on its real-time surroundings," Eli continued. "For example, if the rover encounters an obstacle or terrain it wasn't prepared for, it can adjust its path on its own. It learns from each experience, becoming more effective as it continues its journey." The room was silent as the engineers and experts took in their words, their eyes glued to the screen. Eli could feel the weight of their gazes on him, but he pressed on. "We've also designed an innovative energy system that allows the rover to adapt to the changing conditions of Mars, maximizing its power use during periods of sunlight and conserving energy when needed. And because unexpected damage is a constant risk, we've implemented a self-repair system that allows the rover to fix minor issues as they occur, ensuring its long-term survival on Mars." Jessica switched to the next slide, showing a diagram of the rover's internal components, highlighting the AI-driven decision-making process and the self-repair systems. "Our rover isn't just a machine, it's a partner in exploration. It can adapt to the unknowns of Mars, solve problems on its own, and continue its mission despite the many challenges it may face," Eli concluded. There was a moment of silence after their presentation ended. Eli felt a lump form in his throat. As he waited for the feedback, he and his team exchanged looks of anticipation. Would their idea be enough to impress the experts? Dr. Caldwell was the first to break the silence. She smiled, though her expression remained thoughtful. "I have to admit, this is a very innovative approach," she said. "The concept of adaptive AI is a step forward in how we think about autonomous systems on Mars. It's not just about programming responses, it's about building something that can think and adjust." Eli's heart skipped a beat. That was exactly the reaction they had been hoping for. "But," Dr. Caldwell continued, her tone shifting slightly, "there are a few challenges we need to address. First, AI systems are complex, and the algorithm needs to be tested extensively in different environments. The unpredictability of Mars could cause issues with the rover's decision-making if the algorithm isn't robust enough. Have you run simulations to test how the rover would behave in unpredictable situations?" Jessica nodded quickly. "Yes, we've run a series of simulations with varying levels of terrain complexity and obstacle patterns. While the rover is still learning, we've optimized its decision-making ability, and we believe that it could function well in those conditions. But we know there's still a lot of fine-tuning to be done." Dr. Caldwell seemed satisfied with this answer, but didn't let up. "Good. The self-repair system is another area I'm curious about. How reliable is it in a real-world scenario? Mars is unforgiving, and we can't afford to rely on something that might fail when the rover needs it most." Owen jumped in, his voice steady. "We've built the self-repair system to handle minor mechanical issues, such as a loose wheel, or minor wiring issues, but we're aware that it won't be able to handle every problem. It's a safety net, not a complete solution. The rover will still rely on human intervention for major repairs." Dr. Caldwell nodded again. "I like that approach. It's realistic, but it's something we'll need to keep testing." After the feedback, Eli and his team sat down, feeling both relieved and exhausted. Their rover had impressed the experts, But there was still a lot of work to be done. The journey wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Later that day, Dr. Caldwell came to speak with the team after the presentations. She smiled at them, a little more relaxed than before. "You've got a lot of potential here. Your design shows innovation, and you've thought critically about the challenges of working on Mars. But remember, there's no shortcut to success. You'll need to continue refining your ideas, testing your systems, and collaborating with the experts here. But I'm excited to see where this goes." Eli couldn't help but grin. "Thank you, we're ready for whatever comes next." As the team left the briefing room, there was a mix of excitement and anticipation in the air. They had made a strong impression, but the real work was just beginning. They knew that the road ahead would be tough, filled with obstacles and setbacks. But for the first time, they felt ready for it. They had the vision, the drive, and the support of NASA's best minds. The future was theirs to shape. Eli's feet echoed as he walked down the narrow hallway of the NASA research lab. The weight of the recent review still hung heavy on his shoulders. Their rover design had been praised for its innovation, but the experts had made it clear that they were far from finished. There was work to do, testing to complete, and adjustments to make. The pressure had shifted into high gear. Jessica and Owen walked beside him, both of them sporting expressions that were equal parts determination and fatigue. They'd barely slept the night before, but the urgency of the project pushed them to keep going. Their dream of making a real impact on space exploration was within reach, but it felt like they were constantly on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step and they could fall. "All right," Jessica said, breaking the silence. "We've got the feedback. The AI and self-repair systems need to be tested under more extreme conditions, and we need to make sure the rover can survive Mars's radiation. Time to get to work." Eli nodded. "Agreed. Let's start by breaking down each section of the rover. We can't afford any weak points. We need to make it as close to perfect as possible before the final submission." The three of them entered the lab, and the door slid shut behind them with a soft whoosh. Inside, the space was filled with machines, whiteboards, and computers. Engineers and researchers were scattered around the room, engrossed in their own work. But Eli's eyes were drawn to the large rover model sitting in the center of the room. It was an almost surreal sight. This sleek, innovative machine was something they had all poured their hearts and souls into, and it was ready for the next phase of its journey. "First things first," Owen said, sitting at the computer station. "Let's run a simulation with the AI in extreme conditions. We know the terrain simulations work, but now we need to test it in the most unpredictable, chaotic environment we can come up with." Jessica pulled up a large screen and began typing rapidly, adjusting the parameters for their simulation. "We'll create a simulation with random obstacles, changing weather conditions, and communication failures to see how the rover adapts. We want to make sure it doesn't just handle basic problems, but can also think its way out of difficult situations." Eli watched as the simulation began, the rover's movements on the screen jerking slightly, as it navigated through a rocky landscape, dodging craters and shifting terrain. For a moment, Eli's nerves started to ease. This was their chance to test the AI's capabilities without the risk of failure on Mars itself. "Here we go," Jessica said, as she hit a button to trigger a new set of conditions. "Let's throw in a sudden sandstorm." Immediately, the screen showed a violent gust of wind and dust, limiting the rover's visibility and pushing it off its course. The AI quickly recalculated its path, steering it toward a safer route. The team watched closely, their breath held, as the rover adjusted its movements. "It's working," Eli said, the excitement in his voice evident. "It's thinking on its own. The AI is doing exactly what we wanted." But then suddenly the rover's wheels began to slip as it encountered a patch of slippery ice, a rare occurrence on Mars, but something they couldn't ignore. The rover struggled to gain traction, but the AI didn't seem to know how to adjust for this particular challenge. The team held their breath as the rover continued to spin in place, unable to move forward. "I don't think it's ever encountered ice in the simulations before," Owen said, his brow furrowing. "We didn't program it for that kind of situation." Jessica quickly started typing, pulling up code on the screen. "We need to add ice and extreme cold scenarios to the training database. If we want the rover to adapt to any situation, We have to teach it how to handle everything, no matter how unexpected. Eli leaned forward, his mind racing. Okay, we know that the problem lies with the rover's ability to detect and adapt. Two unique conditions. We've already worked on its problem-solving ability, but we need to refine it further. It needs to learn from these situations on the fly. If it's going to succeed on Mars, it can't afford to freeze up in the middle of a sandstorm or faceplant in the ice. Right, Owen said. Let's focus on those variables. Ice, extreme cold, unexpected terrain, sandstorms, and other environmental hazards. The AI has to adapt to all of them, not just some. For the next several hours, they adjusted the rover's simulations, running test after test, pushing the AI's limits. They added more and more extreme conditions, from massive dust storms to electrical surges that could fry the rover's circuits. The team's work was grueling, but they were learning valuable lessons with every new test. At one point, Jessica hit a button, and the screen showed the rover moving smoothly across a rocky incline, adjusting its path as new obstacles appeared in its way. The AI was learning to think on its own, and it was beginning to succeed at tasks that had once seemed impossible. Eli's heart lifted as he watched the simulation play out. This is it. We've got something real here. Dr. Caldwell walked into the lab just as they were finishing their latest set of tests. She looked over the group with a raised eyebrow, clearly impressed by what she saw. "You're making progress," she said, her tone approving but still measured. "This rover design is starting to show its potential, but don't get too comfortable. You've got a long way to go before you can call this mission ready." Eli smiled, a mix of exhaustion and pride in his expression. "We know, but we're getting closer piece by piece," Dr. Caldwell nodded. "Keep pushing. And remember, in this field, success is about iteration. You make one improvement, and then you go back to the drawing board and find another. Keep refining, keep testing, and most importantly, keep your focus on the bigger picture. This is about more than just building a rover. This is about paving the way for the next generation of explorers." As the team continued their work, Eli felt a sense of purpose that he had never experienced before. They weren't just solving problems. They were changing the future. Every challenge they faced, every obstacle they overcame was a small step forward in their journey to Mars. They still had a long road ahead, but with each test, they were one step closer to seeing their rover roll across the surface of Mars, learning, adapting, and thriving. And for the first time, Eli believed it was truly possible. It had been a week since the team's last major simulation, and the atmosphere in the lab had shifted. The mood was no longer one of nervous anticipation, but of focused determination. They had made incredible strides with the rover's AI system, and it was beginning to behave exactly as they had envisioned, autonomously solving problems, adapting to unexpected conditions, and continuously improving. Eli, Jessica, and Owen had been spending long hours in the lab, testing different aspects of the rover and tweaking its design. They felt like they were on the verge of something monumental. The hard work was starting to pay off. But as they sat in front of the large display monitor, running yet another set of simulations, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something beyond their control. That feeling turned out to be right. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Dr. Caldwell called them into a private meeting. She looked more serious than usual as she gestured for them to sit. "Eli, Jessica, Owen," she began, her voice stern but not unkind. "I've just received a report from the testing division. There's a new obstacle we weren't prepared for, one that could jeopardize the rover's ability to survive on Mars." Eli's heart sank. "What's happened?" Dr. Caldwell paused for a moment before continuing. "NASA's engineers have found a significant problem with the way the rover's wheels are designed. They are not equipped to handle the unpredictable, uneven terrain of Mars, especially when it comes to certain types of soil and rocks that we'll encounter in some of the mission's target areas." Jessica's face fell. "So you're saying our rover could get stuck, or worse, it could break down completely?" Dr. Caldwell nodded. "Exactly. And it's a bigger issue than we initially thought. The rover's ability to navigate tough terrain was one of the key selling points of the design. If the wheels can't handle the challenges of Mars, then it doesn't matter how advanced the AI or self-repair system is. Without mobility, The mission is a non-starter. Eli could feel the weight of the news settling heavily on his shoulders. They had come so far. The rover had passed every simulation, every test. It was intelligent, adaptable, and innovative. But now the wheels, the very foundation of the rover's ability to traverse Mars, were the problem. "Is there any way to fix it?" Owen asked, his voice tense. "We can redesign the wheels," Dr. Caldwell said. "But we don't have much time. The launch window is approaching, and we're on a tight deadline. This redesign needs to be quick and effective, or the mission will be delayed, possibly cancelled." Eli's mind raced. They had spent so much time perfecting the rover's systems, and now they were being told that the most fundamental part of the design was flawed. They couldn't afford a delay. Not now. "All right," Eli said, taking a deep breath. "What are our options?" Dr. Caldwell leaned forward. "We need to rethink the wheel design entirely. The current design is too rigid. It can't adapt to the varying types of terrain that the rover will encounter on Mars. We need wheels that are more flexible, that can grip uneven surfaces without sinking or losing traction. Think of something that can act like a hybrid, part wheel, part tracks, something that can adjust to different conditions." Jessica's eyes lit up. "A hybrid wheel, something that can change its shape based on the terrain. We could use retractable segments like an adaptive wheel system that morphs when it encounters rocky or soft soil." Owen nodded. "Yes, and we could integrate sensors into the wheels themselves so they can adjust the tire pressure and shape in real time, depending on the conditions." Eli felt a spark of hope. It wasn't the solution they had envisioned, but it was an idea that could work. "We'll need to work fast. I'm not sure how long we have, but we can't waste any time." The team got to work immediately, poring over designs, creating new models and testing out various materials and mechanisms. They would have to completely rethink the wheel structure, but the challenge ignited something inside them. They weren't just trying to make a rover, they were trying to make history. The pressure mounted quickly. They had already put so much effort into the rover's other systems, and now they were scrambling to create an entirely new wheel design. The lab was filled with the clatter of keyboards, the hum of 3D printers, and the buzz of machines testing prototypes. Everyone was working at full capacity, aware that the clock was ticking. At first, nothing seemed to go right. The new wheel designs were too bulky, or they didn't have enough flexibility. Others were too lightweight and didn't offer enough traction. The team went through dozens of iterations, and with each failure their spirits seemed to sink lower. Eli watched as Jessica tinkered with the latest prototype. "This design is a mess," she muttered, examining the wheel, which was now covered in dust from the testing. "It's not going to work." "Don't give up yet," Eli said, pushing himself away from his desk. "We've got to keep going. This is just another hurdle. We can't back down now." Owen, who had been silent for a while, finally spoke up. "What if we combine the adaptability of tracks with the efficiency of wheels? What if we build a wheel that has a segmented track system around it? It could switch from wheel mode to track mode when needed, depending on the terrain." Eli's eyes widened. "That's it, a hybrid system. Tracks for soft soil, wheels for smooth surfaces." They quickly got to work, drafting the new design with a combination of flexible, retractable segments and reinforced materials. It was a bold move, but it was their best shot. After hours of testing and fine-tuning, they finally had something that could work. The new hybrid wheel design was not only more flexible, but it also had the ability to adapt in real time to Mars's unpredictable terrain. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a huge step in the right direction. "We've got it," Jessica said, looking up from her workstation with a smile. "It's not perfect, but it's better than anything we've tried before. It can work on both smooth and rough surfaces without sinking or losing traction." Eli let out a relieved breath. "This is it, we're back on track." Dr. Caldwell came by the lab to review their progress, and she was visibly impressed. "I have to say, this is a big improvement. You've solved the problem and done it under pressure. I'm proud of the work you've done here." Eli and his team exchanged smiles. They weren't done yet, but they were closer than ever to achieving their goal. The lab was eerily quiet, a sharp contrast to the usual hum of activity. For the past several weeks, the team had been in overdrive, designing, building and troubleshooting the rover's systems. But now they were nearing the final stage. It was time for the ultimate test, a series of grueling simulations that would push their rover to its absolute limits. Eli, Jessica, and Owen stood around the rover, which was now fully assembled, its new hybrid wheels glistening under the lab's harsh fluorescent lights. The system was in place, ready to face its most rigorous trials yet. "This is it," Eli said, his voice low. "We've come this far. Now we need to prove it works." Jessica nodded, her face a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "If this passes, we're ready for Mars. If not, well, we're going to have to rethink everything. No pressure, right?" Owen grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, no big deal. Just the future of space exploration on the line." Eli smiled weakly, feeling the weight of those words more than ever. He had always dreamed of sending a rover to Mars, but now, in the face of such enormous responsibility, the dream felt overwhelming. If they failed, everything they had worked for could be erased. The team could face disappointment. And worse, their work might not contribute anything to humanity's next steps in space exploration. But failure wasn't an option. Not after everything they'd been through. They gathered around the testing console, ready to begin the first simulation. It was a comprehensive test designed to evaluate the rover's performance on Mars-like terrain. Rocky surfaces, icy patches, sudden shifts in temperature, and unexpected sandstorms. The AI would need to navigate it all without human intervention. Jessica keyed in the parameters. "All right, let's start with a baseline test. We're going to simulate the rocky terrain first. No extreme conditions yet. We just need to see how the rover handles basic navigation." The simulation started. On the large screen, the rover began moving across a rocky, uneven landscape. It carefully adjusted its wheels, shifting them as needed, navigating over bumps and stones with precision. Eli held his breath, watching as the rover's wheels rotated and morphed in real time, gripping the surface without slipping. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. "This is good," Jessica said, relieved. "The AI's response time is solid. It's adapting to the terrain like we hoped." But then, as the rover moved deeper into the rocky area, it encountered an unexpected drop. A large crevice appeared ahead, and the rover's wheels adjusted automatically. But it hesitated for a moment, teetering on the edge. "Oh no," Eli muttered, his heart racing. "Come on." At the last second, the rover's AI calculated a new approach. Its wheels morphed into track mode, creating a wider surface area to grip the ground. Slowly, carefully, the rover made its way around the crevice and continued forward. Jessica let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. That was close, but it worked. The AI adapted. Eli smiled, feeling a sense of pride, but knowing that the tests would only get tougher from here. They moved on to the next test, the sandstorm simulation. This time, the rover had to navigate through a thick dust storm that reduced visibility to almost zero. The rover's sensors were working overtime, trying to calculate a path through the storm. But the real test would come when it was forced to make decisions in real time. Owen hit the button to begin the storm simulation. The screen blurred as a dust storm engulfed the rover, and the world outside became a haze of swirling sand. The rover's movement slowed, but its wheels adapted quickly, shifting to track mode as the sensors detected uneven soil and harsh winds. "This is where the AI has to shine," Eli said, watching closely as the rover inched forward, its path determined by the data coming from its sensors. The rover slowed down further as the storm intensified, its sensors struggling to keep up with the rapidly changing conditions. For a moment, it seemed as though the rover might get stuck, unable to move forward. And then, just as the storm reached its peak, the rover did something unexpected. It paused for a brief moment, calculating its next move. Then it switched gears. The wheels shifted back to wheel mode, and the rover began to climb a nearby ridge, using the terrain to shield itself. "From the worst of the storm, yes," Owen shouted, throwing his fist in the air. "It did it, it adapted." Jessica laughed. "I can't believe it, that was amazing." Eli couldn't help but grin. The rover had passed the first two tests with flying colors, and now it was time for the final simulation, the icy terrain. This was the test that had caused them the most problems in earlier simulations, but now, after weeks of work, they were confident their new hybrid wheels would perform. The team set the simulation to an icy, frozen landscape. The rover's wheels began to spin as it made its way across the slick surface. The hybrid wheels shifted back and forth, adapting to the ice, ensuring that the rover didn't lose traction. But then, a new challenge emerged. A sudden temperature shift occurred, and the ice began to crack under the rover's weight. The rover teetered, its sensors frantically calculating the new conditions. "Come on," Eli muttered under his breath, his hands clenched at his sides. The rover seemed to falter for a second, but then it shifted its weight, adapting to the unstable surface. The wheels expanded, providing a larger surface area to distribute the rover's weight more evenly. Slowly, the rover regained its balance and continued moving across the ice, its sensors constantly adjusting to the freezing temperatures. Jessica let out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. It's doing it. It's handling it. As the final test concluded, the room fell into an expectant silence. The rover had successfully navigated every obstacle, rocky terrain, a sandstorm, and the ice, and it had done so with minimal hesitation. The AI had adapted to each challenge, using the rover's hybrid wheels and intelligent systems to navigate Mars-like conditions. Eli turned to his team, a wide grin spreading across his face. "We did it! This thing's ready for Mars." Jessica laughed, unable to contain her excitement. "We actually did it. I can't believe it." Owen slapped Eli on the back. "This is huge. We've really done it. We're going to Mars." Just then, Dr. Caldwell walked into the lab, a look of approval on her face as she watched the rover finish its final movement. "I have to admit," she said, "I was skeptical about some of the design choices, but you've proven me wrong. This rover is ready. You've all done an incredible job." Eli's heart swelled with pride. They had done it. They had built a rover that could survive the harshest conditions on Mars, and more importantly, one that could make a real difference in humanity's quest for space exploration. "Now," Dr. Caldwell said, her tone shifting, "it's time to start thinking about the next phase, getting this rover to Mars." The countdown clock on the screen seemed to mock Eli, its steady tick-tock echoing through the room like a heartbeat. Every second that passed took him closer to the moment that would define his career, his team, and the future of space exploration. 1 week, he said to himself, staring at the large screen where the countdown was displayed. 1 week until the launch. It had all led to this. The rover, designed and built with months of sleepless nights, hard work, and sacrifice, was now secured in the cargo bay of the spacecraft that would carry it to Mars. The launch site was buzzing with activity, and the excitement was palpable. They had made it this far, but the hardest part was still ahead. The rover would soon travel millions of miles into the unknown. Anything could happen, and the team knew the risks involved. But despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, there was a sense of pride that was impossible to ignore. Eli walked through the Mission Control Center, past rows of engineers and scientists who were all making last-minute adjustments to the launch parameters. The air was thick with tension, but there was also a quiet sense of awe, as if everyone knew they were on the brink of something historic. He found Jessica and Owen standing by the rover's final preparations. "You guys ready?" Eli asked. Though he already knew the answer, Jessica gave him a wide grin. "As ready as we'll ever be. It's crazy to think we're about to launch a rover to Mars. Remember when this was just an idea on paper?" Owen chuckled. "Yeah, and now it's a reality. I don't think I'll ever get used to the fact that we helped design something that's going to land on another planet." Eli nodded, his eyes focused on the rover, now packed inside its protective shell. The team had done everything they could to prepare for this moment. They had overcome every challenge, every obstacle, and now they were standing at the precipice of history. But still, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something might go wrong. "You know, I still can't believe it," Eli said, voice barely above a whisper. "We've been working on this for years, and now it's real. We're about to send our rover to Mars." Owen put a hand on his shoulder. "I know the feeling, but we've done everything we can. Now it's just in the hands of the universe." The launch site was a hive of activity, with technicians and engineers moving with precision as the final moments of preparation ticked away. Eli could feel the tension in the air as the countdown approached its final seconds. Dr. Caldwell walked over to the team, her usual calm demeanor replaced with the excitement that came with the final phase of the mission. "This is it," she said, her eyes shining. "The culmination of everything you've worked for. I know it's hard to imagine, but in just a few days, we'll be watching our rover land on Mars." Eli smiled at her words, but the weight of the mission was starting to feel heavier. "What if something goes wrong?" he asked, his voice almost inaudible. Dr. Caldwell put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've done everything we could to prepare for this. You've designed a rover that will survive, that will thrive, and that will help make history. Whatever happens, you've already achieved something incredible." Eli nodded, taking in her words. She was right. It wasn't just about the rover anymore, it was about the journey. The lessons learned, the challenges overcome, and the people who had worked together to make it all possible. The final days before the launch were a whirlwind of activity. The team reviewed every detail of the mission, making sure the rover was secure, the data systems were functioning, and the launch parameters were perfect. As the hours ticked down, Eli couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. The rover was ready, but was he? "All right, everyone," Dr. Caldwell announced on the day of the launch. "This is it. We're about to make history. Get ready for the ride of a lifetime." The day of the launch arrived, and the entire team was at the site watching from the observation deck as the massive spacecraft stood poised on the launch pad. The countdown clock on the large screen displayed only minutes until liftoff, and the atmosphere was electric. Eli, Jessica, and Owen stood side by side, their faces a mix of excitement and nerves. They had worked for this moment for so long, and now it was finally here. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Eli's heart raced in his chest, his palms sweating. This was it. The culmination of everything they had worked for, the moment they would either succeed or fail. 3, 2, 1. With a deafening roar, the spacecraft's engines ignited, sending a surge of power into the air. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the rocket shot into the sky, piercing the clouds and heading toward the stars. For a moment there was silence, an overwhelming silence that seemed to stretch on forever. The roar of the engines gradually faded, and Eli watched as the spacecraft disappeared into the sky, leaving only a trail of smoke behind. It was done. The rover was on its way to Mars. The mission wasn't over yet. There were still many challenges ahead: landing on Mars, getting the rover to start its exploration, and ensuring the systems continued to function. But in that moment, watching the rocket soar into space, Eli felt a rush of pride, relief, and awe. He turned to his team, his voice filled with emotion. "We did it. We actually did it." Jessica grinned, her eyes shining with excitement. "We're going to make history." "I can't wait to see it land." Owen clapped Eli on the back. "It's just the beginning. Mars is next." As they watched the rocket disappear into the sky, Eli's mind drifted to the future. He had no idea what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. This was just the start of something much bigger. The rover would land on Mars, it would explore, it would uncover secrets. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the first step toward humanity's next great adventure in space. It was a strange feeling, this silence. After all the excitement of the launch, the rushing adrenaline, and the frantic final preparations, now there was nothing, just weeks of waiting. Eli sat in the break room, his eyes fixed on the screen in front of him, showing the spacecraft's slow but steady progress toward Mars. It was a slow crawl, one that felt like it was taking forever. They had launched, but the rover hadn't landed yet. The hardest part was still ahead.
"How's it going?" Jessica asked, breaking the silence as she joined Eli at the table. She took a seat beside him, her eyes also focused on the screen. "Same as before," Eli replied. "The spacecraft's still on track, but we don't know if it will land successfully yet. We just have to wait." She nodded, and for a moment, there was nothing but the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of other team members at work. Eli could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, was now in the hands of fate and physics. If anything went wrong, it wouldn't just be their rover that failed. It would be the culmination of years of dreams, challenges, and breakthroughs. "I keep thinking about the mission," Jessica said, her voice thoughtful. "When I joined this team, it was just a dream. But now, we've created something that will be on Mars. Our rover could be the key to something huge. It might be the first step toward understanding the planet." Eli nodded slowly. He had spent so many hours working on the technical details, ensuring everything was perfect, that he hadn't had the time to stop and think about the bigger picture. The rover wasn't just about them or their team. It was about the future of space, exploration. It was about humanity taking the next step toward exploring a new world. "I think about that too," Eli said quietly. "How it could change everything. Mars isn't just a place we study from a distance anymore. With the rover, we'll get answers. And maybe we'll find something even more incredible than we imagined." He thought back to the late nights in the lab, the countless failures, the reworkings of designs. It had been an endless cycle of successes and setbacks, but in the end they had built something extraordinary, something that would leave its mark on history. As the days passed, the team continued to monitor the rover's progress. They saw the spacecraft slowly drawing closer to Mars, but they knew the real challenge lay in the landing. The atmosphere of Mars was thin, the gravity was weaker, and the surface was littered with rocky terrain and craters. It wasn't just about getting the rover there, it was about getting it to land safely. The engineers and scientists back at Mission Control were working around the clock to monitor the situation, but as the hours ticked away, Eli felt like he couldn't take the uncertainty any longer. "What if it doesn't work?" he asked Jessica one evening, as they watched the countdown to the rover's landing. His voice cracked slightly, the weight of their ambition finally catching up with him. Jessica placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze unwavering. "It will work. We've tested everything. We've thought of every scenario. It's in the best hands. Ours." Eli smiled, grateful for her confidence. "I guess I just feel like everything we've done has led to this one moment. It's like we're all standing on the edge of something huge, but we don't know what's next." Jessica leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. "We've already made history, Eli. No matter what happens, we've already accomplished something amazing." The final moments were excruciating. They all gathered in the control room, waiting for the signal from the rover as it prepared to land on the Martian surface. The room was filled with the soft buzz of communication systems, the low hum of the computers processing data. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screens, but there was a strange calmness in the air. After all, there was nothing they could do now but wait. And then, it came. The signal. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't an announcement. It was a simple line of code. A confirmation that the rover had successfully landed on Mars. For a brief moment, no one moved. The entire room was frozen, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. And then, the room erupted into cheers. Eli stood there, his heart pounding in his chest, unable to believe it. It had worked. Their rover, their creation, was on Mars. They had made history. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the day. They had succeeded, but in the silence of the night he couldn't help but wonder what would come next. What discoveries would the rover make? What secrets would Mars reveal? And perhaps more importantly, how would humanity respond to the possibility of life beyond Earth? He thought about his team. They had all sacrificed so much to get to this point. Time with family, long hours of work, endless problem-solving, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. They had become more than just colleagues. They had become a family, bound together by a shared goal and a common dream. And that dream was now a reality. In the days that followed, The team began to receive the first transmissions from the rover. It was clear that the mission was a success. The rover was sending back images and data that would change the way humanity viewed Mars. The team analyzed the data, slowly piecing together a clearer picture of the planet's surface, its atmosphere, and its potential for life. The team's success was celebrated around the world, but for Eli, the most meaningful moment was when he stood with Jessica and Owen, watching the rover's first images come through. It wasn't just a piece of technology anymore. It was a symbol of their hard work, their dedication, and their belief in the impossible. "I never imagined this day would come," Eli said quietly, watching as the first images of Mars appeared on the screen. "But here we are. The rover is on Mars, and it's making history." Jessica smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "And we're just getting started." Eli looked at his team, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of their journey, both the physical and emotional toll. But it was all worth it. This was only the beginning. There was so much more to discover, so much more to learn. They had opened the door to a new era of space exploration, and nothing would ever be the same again. He turned back to the screen, watching the rover move across the Martian surface. The future was unfolding right before his eyes. "Yeah," he said with a smile. "Just the beginning. The end? Or just the beginning of something far bigger?"